Welcome back to Story Chaser, the podcast that uncovers the powerful human stories that too often go untold. I'm your host, Tara Ruff. We tell ourselves we understand addiction in this country. It shows up in our news cycles, in our courtrooms, in our films, always as a side character, never the main. Somewhere between every rock bottom montage and redemption arc Hollywood has ever sold us, we've absorbed a version of what this looks like. The drunk is comic relief. The assault victim on the witness stand who isn't considered credible. The addict is someone else's backstory, the cautionary tale, the ghost haunting a more important narrative. And on the rare occasion addiction does get to be the story, we romanticize it. We make it beautiful and doomed. We give it a visual language that has almost nothing to do with what it actually feels like from the inside. And what we don't get to see is what happens between those scenes. The years, the cycling, the self-loathing, the moment when the enjoyment is gone and the substance is being used just to feel normal, not to get high, not to escape, just to function. The road that ends for far too many people in jails, institutions, or death. And the specific suffocating terror of not being able to see any way out. Drug overdose is still the leading cause of death for every American between the ages of 18 and 44. Of the nearly 49 million people who needed treatment for alcohol or substance use last year, only 1 in 5 received it. The gap between who needs help and who gets it is not policy failure. It's a reflection of what we actually believe, that somewhere underneath the disease, they made a choice. And nowhere does that belief do more damage than in our courtrooms. 85% of prison population has an active substance use disorder or is incarcerated for a crime involving drugs or drug use. Studies consistently show that incarcerating people for drug-related offenses has no measurable effect on whether they reoffend. Treatment works. Incarceration for this population largely doesn't. And yet the default, it's still a cell. For most people cycling through that system, there's no one in the room making the argument on their behalf. My guest today was once that person. He spent years in and out of the American prison system. He built one of the most controversial entertainment brands of the early 2000s. He had money, power, everything he'd spent his life chasing, and still hit a wall so hard it nearly ended everything. 18 years ago, he got clean. Since then, Michael Lynch founded Stairway Recovery, one of the largest sober living programs in Los Angeles, built entirely on word of mouth. He's become one of the loudest voices in the country on addiction and mental health, on what recovery actually looks like when the system isn't built to support it and society was never built to understand it. And he flies across the country for free to stand beside strangers in courtrooms and say what no one else in that room is willing to say, that the person sitting at that table has a disease, not a character flaw, and that a cell will only make it worse. He's never walked out without the person he went in with. This is a conversation about addiction, about recovery, and about what it means to walk back into the fire to pull someone else out. So, Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want to start where most people do with kind of your origin story, right? So not the business and not recovery, but growing up and who you were as a kid. So what was the world like for you then?
Hostile. I'm a foster kid. My parents didn't want to be in the parenting business. So my parents were addicts too, and they were very young when they had me. So they had dropped me off at my grandparents, and they ended up passing away from the disease of addiction. And my grandparents, um, tried to raise me as best they could, but I was pretty wild. And then they end up passing away too. And then I was 13, and I was, in and out of. I wouldn't even stay in foster care though. I'd run, and so I'd go to juvenile hall and all of that stuff. So that was my childhood. Gangs,
Wow.
all. Mhm.
So you had a front row seat very early on to what addiction looks like.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you aware of it at that time? Was it something you saw your parents battling and you saw how it
No,
was hurting them?
no. I hadn't saw my mother. I hadn't seen since I was 6 years old. So I don't remember any of that. I saw it with my real father. He would show up. I would wake up. I remember as a child, and I'd wake up, he'd be on the couch or whatever. And I didn't know at the time he probably was just got out of jail. Um, and he would make promises, and then he would just disappear. And then I as I got a little older, well, I was still a kid before he passed, and I remember he was just drunk all the time and violent man. So yeah, I understood.
Yeah. And so he circulated throughout he was incarcerated quite a lot too growing up.
Honestly, I don't know how much my grandparents were a family of secrets, so they didn't
Yeah.
really about anything. But I was very young too, so they probably shouldn't
Right.
have been talking about it. Honestly.
Right. Right. Right, no, but that leads me to the next kind of question. I've been doing my own research, of course, on you. You've lived a million lives in one, which I always like to say, but a lot of that in those early years was, in and out of incarceration. So I love to understand what was that world like being in and out. Prison politics is something you talk about a lot as well. What did you do in those scenarios to learn how to survive that?
I was raised in it, so um, I was very young, running around with gangs, and I always ran around with these older guys, and I had always been hustling since I was really young, and I had a lot of exposure to things that I probably shouldn't have at my age. So, I grew up really fast. So by the time I was in, juvenile hall, I was running around. Um, Definitely not scared. I was more of the troublemaker. And then I went to California Youth Authority, which is harder than any penitentiary that ever is. It's wild, And back when I went to YA, you had to go to YA for, murder, attempted murder, enough robberies, and you had the craziest kids, from 13 to 24, and the craziest kids that you can imagine, and then they all have to be in one place.
Jeez.
In environments like that, no matter what, there are always predators and there's always prey. And you might have been a
Yeah.
predator here, but there's, more sophisticated predators in there. And so a lot of it was mental chess. A lot of people have a misconception about like prison and or YA or anything like that. And same with the streets. Honestly, people have a lot of misconceptions. It's not the biggest, baddest dude that can beat everyone up that ends up doing the best. It's those that you have to be capable. Don't get me wrong. Violence is definitely must be had when
Yeah.
appropriate, but it really comes down to playing chess and being able to navigate in those situations and kind of dominate the rooms that you're in, and
Wow.
I was pretty good at that. It
And what
seems
age
it's
were you?
when I started
What
doing
age were you? Yeah, yeah.
15,
13 years old, already knowing how to run the streets and having to protect yourself in many ways from situations, so you have to be on top.
they tried to give me when I was 13, they tried to send me to the Scared Straight program. I don't even know if they still have that. And they do this thing where they bring these guys out of prison and they're supposed to scare you and tell you
Uh
how you're getting all this different shit. And it's funny because I go on there with all these other kids my age that are and younger and a little bit older, and my homeboys had already told me that all the guys that they allow to do that are actually the punks. They're the weak ones because they're not going to let real gangsters out. So I wanted to be a cool guy during the Scared Straight program, and they would try to threaten me, and I'd try to fight them, and I knew they wouldn't fight me. You know what I mean? Because they're not trying to
Right.
more time. So yeah, I failed that, none of the interventions ever worked for me, honestly. As a child, I
Right.
would never listen to anyone or anything.
No, no, I understand that. You were kind of set in a way where you knew what you were good at, if that's fair to say.
I don't know if that was I don't know if I knew what I was good at. I just only knew one way.
Yeah.
That's the only way I knew.
Yeah. Well, you kept getting in, you kept getting out, like you were filtering in between and in between. Was there a point, if any, that you looked at the cycle that you were in and you said, okay, this can't be the rest of my life at that stage?
No, I remember there was a moment, and I was in the shoe. The shoe is segregated housing unit. Um, and I remember when I was really young, and actually the whole time, I used to look up to these certain guys that were in the place that I found myself, and remember thinking, that's when you made it. You made it when you're there, and And I thought that these guys cared, and there was like this big organization and you could be a part of something. And, because of my past, I now look and understand why I was the way I was. I just was trying to find family anywhere. Uh, and, I finally went back there, and I go back and I finally made it. And making it in there is such loser shit, honestly. It's basically, I want people that are never getting out to know my name. What's the point, right? And that's as big as I thought you can get in life, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm back there, and I can't go into a lot of details, but I get involved in some things, and I realized, I may never get out of this place. And I thought to myself, these guys don't care. They're not anything that they said they were, that it was supposed to be about. It's a bunch of bored psychopaths, uh,
Mm,
just wanting more people to stay in there with them, I think, you know? And I had that realization, but the problem was, I remember having that realization, but I'm like, this is going to be my life because one, I went too far in some of the things that I've done and been a part of, and there's no getting out. And it's all I knew. And even when I had my moment of, like what most people know me by is this huge felony fights and all this different stuff, even with that, I was still a criminal. I was still a gangster, and I still end up going back. Like I
yeah.
do. And that's what I've always done. It's part of
Yeah.
life. I accepted that.
Yeah. Did it become something that felt safe at a point? You'd been there, done that?
Oh, of course. What wasn't safe was out here. I was good in there. I understood how to navigate in there, and I was somebody in there. I come out here, I'm nobody. I'm actually the opposite. I'm a criminal that's looked down upon, that doesn't even have simple life skills.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not very important out here, and I didn't know how to live life out here and how to navigate these rules.
Right, right. And that's what's so interesting about having done my own research into your life is that, felony fights, I didn't realize like that was before you'd entered, recovery. That was before any of it. So you were still active in that community. What was it like? Was it feeding everything else? Did that brainchild almost, was it a part of that addiction journey that you were on?
Yeah. Well, when I was in prison, I came up with the idea, and I
Okay.
financed it. I sold drugs and contraband the whole time I was in prison, right? And
Yeah.
I was that guy. And I had a plan. There's some things I was good at. I love fighting, and I was good at organizing gangs and organizing people, those kind of. And so I started this underground fight club. And yeah, and I didn't expect it to do what it did. And it hit best selling all over the place, and I had worldwide distribution. And but the thing is what nobody knows, what a lot of people don't know, and I say it today, I admit it today, I had so much money coming in. I had
Mm,
fame, all this. I was still doing crime the whole time.
yeah.
I could not stop doing criminal activity because I was sick. I was addicted to this whole lifestyle of the things I was doing and involved in. And just because I had a legitimate company, I was just a gangster with the company. There was no difference between my lifestyle, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I think what's interesting too, because obviously felony fights is what you were known for so long. And I
Yeah.
think it's really fascinating upon doing my own research. It's interesting. There's actually like academic studies about felony fights,
Yes,
right?
there are.
About how in some arguments that it fed a specific cultural appetite for seeing incarcerated people as subhuman. I found that fascinating because what you're doing now, what you're dedicated your life to is the exact opposite of what that sentiment is. How do you see those two things existing at the same time?
They can't. One must this thing about recovery is, it's true. They said when I came in that you must change everything. And I remember thinking, that's impossible. And I had to trade over a life of violence and dominance and horrible fucking life. And I had to just trade that for the opposite: love, connection, helping people, empathy. These are foreign concepts to me. Those were foreign concepts to me, and it didn't happen overnight. I've been clean 18 years, and
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work on myself, and I still do. But it's a better life. That's for sure. But I think I owe, and I don't owe because of felony fights. Like everyone wanted to fight that fought. I didn't prey on anybody, like bum fights did.
Yeah.
Even though I know those guys. But my life, even around felony fights and what people didn't see, it was just this life of like hurting people in one form or another, And
Yeah.
I sold poison. I
Yeah.
sold so much poison and I did so much crazy stuff, and it's like, and I believe I still owe, I do, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to do my best to pay it back.
Right. And that's, where I'm so happy to have found your work because addiction is one of those things I think so many people in this world do not understand. They
Right.
other. And you've spent years talking about this, running a sober living home, advocating publicly. So before I get into your own story a bit, how do you actually define addiction? Not the clinical version, but your version of what it is.
Um, do you use despite negative consequences? That can be from pussy to bubblegum to drugs to whatever. Do you use despite negative consequences? If something in your life is
Mm.
you can't stop and you continue and you can't stop, that's addiction. That's what it
Yeah.
is. And addiction has nothing to do, honestly, with the substances I'm using or the outside things. It has to do with my obsession and my compulsion to these things. That's all it is. And
Yeah.
when I stop one, I have to go to the other or another or another. Um, and it's and I think that I personally think this. I think that the disease, I used to hate that term when they say the
Mm.
disease, but the disease of addiction, I think literally is denial. When they say the disease, it's denial. That's what it is. And denial is being incapable of seeing my reality. You can tell me all you want. You try to talk to an addict. And you're like, what are you doing?
Right.
And you're like, it's not that bad. Or how's this? Destroy my life, get clean. And I'm like, I think I can use a different drug. That is straight denial. And that's what the
Yeah.
disease of addiction is. And I think it's a mental health issue. I absolutely do.
Yeah. I mean, that's when we see people who refer to alcoholism or addiction as real as cancer, as
Yeah.
real as Alzheimer's. Like, yes, that is what this is, and it's affecting the brain. When
Yes.
did you first understand that that's what you were dealing with
Mm.
personally?
What's funny is I got busted my last time, and then I was put in this rehab in jail while I'm fighting this big case for hitting a cop. And and they would try to say, in Narcotics Anonymous, you introduce yourself, your name, and you say addict. My name is Michael, and I am an addict. Everyone in there was doing that, and I said my nickname was Solo, and I had not nobody had called me Michael since I was probably 13. So I said my name's Solo, and they're like, "There's no gang names here," and I'm like, "Well, you're not calling me by my first name." And I said, "Well, you can call me Lynch like the cops do because you're a cop too," is what I told the counselors in there. And I wasn't a great person in there. So, and then they said I'm supposed to say addict, and I said, "You fuck, I ain't calling myself a fucking addict. Are you kidding me?" Because that word to me was like calling myself some fucking thing like that. That's crazy, and it's wild because I didn't. It never occurred to me that I'm an addict. It's so
Mm.
wild. I knew I was crazy. That's why I was going to commit suicide. My bottom was I was going to commit suicide because I was like, why do I keep no sane person would continue to do the same thing over and over and over and over again? That's insane. But I didn't know there were other people that thought like me because I'd never told a human being exactly how I thought.
Right.
And I got kicked out of that rehab and for threatening everyone. And they sent me back to mainline. And when I told them when I came in, I'm like, I'm not your friend. Don't talk to me. And if you do, I'm gonna, do some violence to you. And because I thought I didn't understand. We're in jail, but they're doing this weird like culty thing, and it seemed to me like they're probably child molesters or something. That's what I was thinking. Um, And so I wouldn't open the book. And I told him, I'm not doing this thing. I'm
Mm.
not doing a fucking cult. And so
Mhm.
I would sit at the table by myself, of course. No one would sit at my table. And I would keep the book right there and I wouldn't open it. And I heard a tape and this guy, a CD, and this guy said something that I'd never heard in my life that I had. And he called it impending doom.
Mm.
I went, I'd never told nobody that. And I was like, what the fuck? He put words to this thing that I've always had.
Right.
And I wanted to know what was in the book, but I wouldn't open the book because I'd already said I won't. And so when they kicked me out, I stole the book and I read it back when I was on mainline. I'm reading this book and I was like, what the hell? Like they could have put Michael on the top and wrote the book. And I was like, this is weird. This is weird. And I was like, I wonder how many copies they did of this because this is pretty specific.
Right.
And that's when I started to go, maybe this is my problem.
Mm.
It described everything I do. It's wild. I didn't know. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I had an excuse
Right.
for everything. I didn't know what was wrong with me.
Right. No, the denial is what you say, and it's funny you say the cult aspect. I remember one of my loved ones when they first came
Uh-huh.
out of rehab, they
Yeah.
were professing things like the Dalai Lama, and I was like, okay, very profound notions, but things that I think can equate to anything. There's
Um,
so many different villains and battles and demons that we have in our lives. And the things that she would say, I stopped and I said, oh my God, you're enlightened. Um, but take me back then to what a day in the life was for you when you were fully addicted. Whether what substances it was, what was a wake up, I'm Michael Lynch, what am I doing with my day?
at what time, what part of my life? I'll tell you
During
at
the
without.
during the Y you tell me what was the worst. I would say when was you were hitting that rock bottom portion, what was
Oh,
happening that
myself. So the end for me, because I hit a cop, I got arrested, but then I got bailed out.
okay,
And so then I continued to go and I'm trying to hold this life together because my life was big at that time. I had felony fights. I had this Queen of Hood series. I did Porn Star Punch Out hosted by Ron Jeremy. I'm doing club events. Um, what else? I was doing clothing lines. I had all these things going on and it was like,
yeah,
but I was not able to hold it together very well anymore.
yeah,
And so for me, I would wake up. So I wouldn't even open my eyes when I'd come to. I wouldn't wake up when I'd come to. I would go like this by my bed and I'd hit the bottle with my hand and I'd pull it up. And then I'd take a couple swigs before I opened my eyes. Then I'd go in the shower and I had a shelf just for my bottle. And then I would drink my stuff. And so prior to that, I was doing because I've done all the different drugs and I would change them, thinking they were the problem. And the last ones were was cocaine and alcohol. But then I actually stopped the cocaine and
mhm,
increased the alcohol, thinking, cocaine, it makes me a little too angry because
yeah,
it started where it's fun, but then I become like a psychopath on it and I do crazy things that I you know, probably shouldn't. And so the alcohol, it was crazy. I would drink alcohol from the time 100 proof vodka straight out the bottle from the time I woke up all through the day, all through the night, and that was my life. And before it made it where I could like talk to you the way I'm talking to you right now, like function and be able
I
to.
see.
But it worked. It was my social lubrication. Honestly, I always say this is that if I didn't have drugs and I include alcohol in that, I think I would have committed suicide a long time ago.
Yeah,
I believe that because it made it where life was bearable
yeah,
and I was able to like have a false connection to some people. Um,
mm,
and because honestly, I do believe that there's a thing on this, but I do believe that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think that drugs give us give us this solution because all addicts, we feel disconnected. Call it what you want, but a lot of us, you can go all the way back to childhood and you say, I've always felt disconnected. I felt uncomfortable in my skin. And this disconnection piece, alcohol and drugs give us a false sense of connection. And it gives us that. And the Native
mm,
Americans called it spirits for a reason. I think that like wine and spirits on a store, you see,
yep,
they are spirits. I don't think they're positive spirits, but I think they're spirits. And these they give us a false sense of connection, and it lasts for so long. But then what ends up happening, is, we start burning out, those dopamine receptors and all of that. And, it stops working. It stops
Yeah.
working. It stops doing the thing that it did before. And then we're at this crossroads where it's like, holy shit, man, I, I don't want to live the way I'm living, but I can't stop doing what I'm doing.
Right. And it's something you've said that I think I want to like call out is that you never thought of alcohol specifically as a drug back
No.
when you were using. I think most people in our society don't. And that's why what you said is so important to call out. It is become a social lubricant that most people abuse because it's normalized in society. And I think that
Mhm.
that's something where you've talked about this as well. The generations below, the people who are coming up right now, do you have any thoughts? Having worked with a lot of people from a lot of different age groups in, the Stairway Recovery of what's happening to our next generations right
I
now when
would,
it
I
comes
would, I would, I would, I would highlight two different things that society is kind of looks at as not quite a hard drug. And I'm
Yeah,
in the front line. So you know what another one is that I'm seeing a lot of mental health disorders going on as weed is
yeah,
THC, is marijuana. It is because the levels of the THC that they have today, it is bringing on schizophrenia in crazy numbers. And I'm seeing it over and over and over. And you're having so many that are not able to even come back, it will make somebody schizophrenic, and they never come back from that. And it's the THC that's doing that. Um, and they say that weed's not a problem. Well, maybe for some people it's not, but you don't know if you have that. You don't know if it affects you differently than someone else until you're there, And I'm seeing it a lot. And I'm seeing a lot of kids, 18 years old, 19 years old, and they're just full schizophrenic. They don't do anything but weed. But the alcohol piece, the alcohol is a tricky one because, see, when you use narcotics, you get physically dependent quickly.
yeah,
With alcohol, it takes longer. And when you start to become physically dependent on alcohol, what it does is it eats your soul so much slower, but so much deeper. It really does. And, and you trick yourself because the problem is it's socially acceptable. And when you start having a problem, you're thinking, what I just need to learn how to not drink as much,
yeah,
but I don't know. That's the one and I've used them all. That is the one that was my demon. That was the one that brought me to my knees. Like no drugs ever
yeah,
had, and because I was able to build a multi-million-dollar life on it. I was able to my external life looked really good, but man, did it eat my soul, and
right,
I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop.
yeah. So then tell me what was the moment where you embraced recovery? When you were like, "Okay, this has gotten to the point where I need to stop."
Oh, 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 no, no, I didn't get to that point where I said I want to stop. I was going to commit suicide. And then, I woke up one day in a multi-million-dollar house. I decided I'm going to kill myself. And I really was going to, and I wanted to get all the paperwork, everything over to get where everything goes to my daughter. And and then I was going to kill myself in 2 days. The next day I walk out of my house and I'm raided by the cops, and,
Okay,
I was
okay,
saved. Um, And so then what ends up happening is I ended up, getting busted, and then they put me in this rehab thing in jail
I
life,
see.
and I was like, "I'm not an addict, you're a cult, you guys are stupid."
Right, right, right.
It was I always say this, I became an addict through doing step work, through the
Yeah,
book.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know when the moment happened when I embraced this and made it. I always say this is that the difference between those of us that stay around and have a really good life and those that don't is you have to make a decision to make this a lifestyle.
yeah,
This is a lifestyle.
yeah,
And it's not something that I have to do to where I stay sober, clean. If that's your mindset, you're not gonna. You might be
right,
able to get a couple years, a few years, but you're not gonna build a really amazing life internally and
yeah,
externally if you don't just commit that this is my lifestyle now. Because there's so much that comes with it other than not picking up, you
right,
know.
right.
So I don't know when it was. If you want my truth, probably 4.5 years in when
Yeah,
I when I truly started going, holy shit, this is working. This is crazy, you know?
What a beautiful thing that is. And then Stairway Recovery. So was that something that was a side thought and you said, "Wow, maybe I should actually pursue this passion project." So how did that come to be when it finally opened? And tell me a bit about what Stairway is and how it's different maybe from other, sober
Oh,
living homes.
I'm not just sober living. I also have treatment centers and a medical practice. I started as this little passion project because I hate the treatment industry. They use my people like a commodity. In the 90 percentile, I believe. It's a broken system. If you look at the relapse rates and you look at the success out of these places, it's horrible. And the treatment industry is all geared towards repeat customers, just like
Mm,
any other business. Unfortunately, these customers die in the meantime and they don't give a shit, you know. And I think it's because it's such a new industry. There isn't enough oversight. You don't have enough professionals in it, honestly. But you know, I got in the heyday. There was the human trafficking going on and body brokering and all this wild stuff happening. And I'm back in entertainment. I'm doing all these big projects. I also have tattoo shops and vape shops and all these other businesses, and I'm in recovery. So all of, you know, I have this one shop where I have these big meetings that I'd have these big NA and AA meetings. And I started hearing about all this stuff that was going on in these sober livings and stuff. And I was like, what the fuck? And they're like selling our people to treatment centers. And they're like dying. It's body brokering. And I was literally fighting people out of these meetings that were body brokers, literally beating their asses to get them out because there's
and
no law.
explain what a body broker is.
A body broker is a person that gets paid to put an addict in a treatment center. And what they do is these treatment centers, these detoxes will pay other addicts for referrals. And what they do is they pay a lot of times the addict and they say to the addict, hey, do you want to make a couple $1,000s and I'll give you free drugs? What I want you to do is I want you to I want you to go in to this. I'm going to give you money once you complete a certain amount of days, and you go in there for a few days. We're going to bill your insurance, and then you're going to come out, and then you're going to continue to get loaded, and we're going to pay for it all, and then we'll put you in another one or again, and we're going to bill your insurance. And what happens in between that is a lot of them die, and this was going on insanely, and so I'm just a guy in recovery. And so what
Yeah.
I end up doing I was like, I couldn't find one. This is sickening. In the San Fernando Valley, I couldn't find one sober living that wasn't involved in some kind of horrible things that were done to my people. And at the time, I would say there's probably over 100. And that is disgusting. And so, you know, I just decided one day, I said he's like my brother, my business partner. I tell him, I said, hey, bro, why don't we just do one the way it worked for me as a
Mhm.
little passion project? Well, we thought we're going to each give a few thousand a month. You know, we'll open a little sober living. I'll
Yeah.
probably have like 3 or 4 guys because we're going to do the things that addicts don't want to do, structured, gender specific, and you must do steps.
Yes.
And while all these other places are like, oh, you can smoke weed, it's co-ed, you can do whatever. So most addicts are going to be like, oh, I'd rather do that, even though
Right.
they keep me clean.
Right.
And so, yeah, I started this little thing as a passion project, and my phone kept ringing and people kept staying clean. And, you know, and it turned into now we're, I think the largest in Los Angeles. I have 170 beds. You know, we're really good at mental health. Oh my gosh. I do really good trauma work at my center. I have this amazing resource center where, you know, I think that addiction, there's a 2-part that needs to be had. I think we need to deal with addiction and mental health.
Yeah.
Uh, it's a co-occurring disorder.
Yeah.
And I think that not all people with trauma are addicts, but all addicts have trauma of one form or another. And I think that if it's not the underlying cause for addiction, it's definitely the underlying cause on why I sabotage. And so if the base for us is the 12 steps of AA, NA, CA, whichever, but then we get into the real trauma work, and I have the best clinicians in the game. Everyone on I love my team. I have the best team. They're so amazing. You know, and we do long term, and we don't let insurance companies dictate level of care. I scholarship the hell out of so many people. always on the back end, and they leave when we know that when we believe that we can say, okay, I have confidence that they're going to be successful, then we will discharge, not what
Right.
some insurance company says or anything
Right.
like that. And I think that sets us apart like big time. Big time. We're a big community. That's what we're known for. Here's another one is I tell I have a relationship with every single person under my care. I'm at the center every day. And I tell them when they come in, I say, listen, I'm going to ask you guys to do some things, and if you don't see me doing what I have you do, the rules, then you don't have to follow any of my rules. Is that fair? They'll be like, yeah. And I said, have you ever had an owner say that to you? I bet you haven't. Because see, when I came in, I was being told to do a lot of things by these counselors, I never met the owner, but all these people, and they weren't doing it, but they're telling me to do
Yeah.
it. See, I didn't notice. I noticed that they were hypocrites, and I've never been able to be led by anybody. And this is what I realized. I never would follow anyone that their feet didn't match their mouth.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's very important that I'm doing the things like they see me at the meetings. I have a sponsor. I'm doing my steps. I'm doing all of the same things that I'm
Right.
asking them to do because I'm the same as them.
Exactly.
And I think that is a big part that sets us apart because my staff are the same way. I will not have anybody on my team that their feet doesn't match their mouth. If they're asking our clients to do something, they should be doing it themselves and their own
Yeah.
recovery, you know?
No, absolutely. I can imagine too, you've had folks come from other facilities who've been to many different places and then finally find you. How has that situation been, especially in terms of people who've been abused in these other facilities in this body brokering
The
situation?
majority of the people I get. So when someone calls me and they'll say, hey, I have a guy or a girl here, they're a perfect fit for you. You know what that means? They failed at every single place. They've been through 20 other places and no one can deal with them.
Okay.
And yeah, so
Okay.
they come to us.
It's a little bit of a darker question, but I feel like it's warranted just because of the way this goes is has there ever been anyone in your work so far that you've lost who did everything right, who followed all the steps and didn't make it?
Um, so we don't lose somebody that's done all the right things, but unfortunately, I have lost a lot. And if you came in my office, you'd see I have this wall, and on my wall, I have every person that has ever been through Stairway, and we've had thousands in the last 9 years. Anyone that's ever been through Stairway has passed away is on my wall. And it's use that as an example. All my staff will always say to the clients, like, you don't want to be on Michael's wall.
Yeah.
And the wall, statistically, my whole office should be full, and it's not because we do good work, but not everyone makes it because not
Yeah.
everyone consistently does this thing. This thing that we have in here will tell us we'll do all the things. We get these gifts in life, and then we tell ourselves, I don't need to do the thing that got me the gifts.
Right.
And then we die, some of
Right.
us. And I get close with every single one, so it's like it's just heartbreaking, so I put those on my wall for me to remember every day. Every day I come in, I look, and it reminds me why I'm doing it, because this is hard work, and
Yeah.
it's hard, and it's 7 days a week. It's all the time,
Yeah.
and a lot of times I want to quit, but I won't,
Yeah.
but it reminds me why I'm doing it, and then it also reminds me that I'm an addict and I'm just as susceptible of being on my own wall,
Yeah.
if I do the things that I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. And that leads me to your work in courtrooms. So you call it court advocacy. It's something that, if you follow you on Instagram or social media, you see what made you want to start doing this and tell me a little bit about what it is you're doing in these courtrooms.
Oh, I love doing the court advocacy. So, yeah, I do. I do. So my friend that saved my life was a criminal attorney. He tricked me into the program. He's the one that put me in there, in that place.
Okay.
And when I got out, he was like my father figure. We spent all the holidays together. He got my daughter back for me. I'm a single dad. And he taught me like what a man really is. And he's also in recovery. And he ended up passing away, but I used to go to court. He'd have me go to court with him and prepare All his name was Richard Pintel, and you'd be like, you need to prepare the Pintel package, and it's all the paperwork and how we're going to do it. And he was the best attorney I've ever seen, um, and I don't know. It's I've been doing this for so many years, and what happened, I don't know how it just happened. People, I go in and I don't go in. So just to be clear here, I will not go into court just for anybody.
Yeah.
Uh, if I believe that you have transformed your life and I see that you have, I will go into court and knock on wood, every single person's walked out with me.
Wow.
And yeah, I have a guy right now that's fighting a life sentence, and I am confident. I have a girl that I'm trying to give her 18 years federal time. The thing is, though, is what we do is there's also strategy in it because I keep them in my program. I have them do as much time, and then we go with some time. And when there's a transformation, we convince them, and sometimes I'll be able to have them sentence them to my program instead of prison time as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, it's awesome because I like doing it. I don't This is going to sound crazy because I spent a lot of my life in prison. I'm not one of those guys that think that everyone should be getting off. No.
Yeah.
No. Like when I was in there, I was an animal out here. I should have been in prison because I'm out here hurting people. Um, I'm not interested in helping people beat the system and stay out to continue to hurt people or themselves. So I'm not one of those people that think that I should just try to get everyone out. But if you have transformed your life, um, especially if you're in recovery, not only is it you're just going to get a life back. Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, no. You end up helping. In order to stay clean, you have to continue to help people and help people and help people. So every
Yeah.
person that I help get clean and get off these cases and build a life, the pebble effect is huge, not only to their own family, but all the other men and women that they need to help along the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine it's an uphill battle because the justice system was not designed to hear or to protect people who are in recovery. How do you get a judge or a DA to see it differently when you're in front of them?
Um, well, I start with all the progress reports, all the different things, and show them, and I try to explain because I think that I used to think all the judges were against me and they're all pieces of shit, and same with the cops. Um, but honestly, the judges don't know what to do either because you think about it. If us addicts, like, it doesn't make any sense to anyone. It's like, okay, I'm gonna send you to a program instead of prison, and then you go and get loaded and commit more crimes, and they're like, why would you do that?
Right.
Well, what they don't understand is the person that's doing it doesn't know why either. I'm gonna tell
Yeah.
you why. Just because we're addicts, that's the why. I'm an
Yeah.
addict, that's what I do. And they don't know what to do because they have not got a handle on how to deal with addiction. So they put them in these places that aren't going to work, and they continue to use, and then they keep coming before them with new crimes and new getting loaded. So the judges have no choice. They're like, okay, I know prison's not going to work. I believe that the judge believes this. Prison is not going to work, but at least I can put you in there to where you're not hurting yourself and other people for that amount of time until you get
Yeah.
out and do it again. So I think that they don't know what to do either. And so I think that plays a big part in why they're so happy when I come in, because the judges are usually eventually on my side. They're always like, because I'll explain to them. I say, listen, if you incarcerate him right now, and I will explain what we're doing in our program, where we're at with the trauma work, what we're going to do next, and I will tell them, I will say, if you incarcerate them, you are going to stop the progress that I have going on. I will guarantee you they're going to go in there, they're going to get out, and they're going to continue to use and commit crimes. Their history has shown it. That's why I
Yeah.
like going with the hardest cases, because you got somebody that like has all this criminal history. You're like, you've proven, and I'll tell the judge, they have proven when they get out again, they're going to continue to commit crimes. If you look at how long they've been with me, they have stayed clean. They have not committed any more crimes. And I'm telling you that not only if you will allow them to finish my program, not only are they going to not commit crimes again, but they're going to help others not do it. 100% of the time, they're like, that's logical. All right.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right, and having you on their side, what you said at the top, the opposite of addiction is community or
Connection.
is it connection,
Connection.
like, I think that that's so important, and listen, like, I've been to Al-Anon meetings, I've sat in those rooms, I definitely went through a period, Michael, where I was in a denial about the person I loved being
Yeah.
addicted, because, of course, there's this image in your mind, if someone's an addict, you don't know what to do with them. You're scared to be around them. So
Yeah.
for people listening, and I think that it's really important, what do you want the people sitting in those Al-Anon rooms to understand about the person they're trying to love? The thing that's hardest to see from the outside.
You're not going to fix them. You need to get that through your head. You're not going to fix them. You're going to love them to death. And here's the bottom line. The hardest person for me to treat is the one with the mom, the dad, the wife, the husband that continues to enable them because they think it's out of love, but it's actually out of selfishness. They want that person in their life. They don't want them not liking them. So really it's about themselves. And I can never, and I'll say that to families when they try to bring their kids in, I'll say, I'm going to tell you right now, I won't be able to succeed with your child. And
Yeah.
it's because, and I'll tell them, I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong, but has it worked your way? It
Yeah.
has. So I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you, and I will tell all people that love an addict, I will tell them you are going to need to make a decision, and it's not as easy as you think. And that decision is: would you rather them love you and die, or hate you and live? And 100% say, "Oh, I'd rather them hate me and live." Really? Then draw the boundaries. And what you find, if you really are looking at yourself, you're going to find actually that's not true. You would rather, it's all about you. You would rather
Right.
them love you and die.
Right. Now that one makes me choked up. That one gets me in the feels a bit. But you speak a lot about systemic and like the changes we need to make as a nation, right? If you could change one structural thing about the way this country treats addiction, right? What would you choose to talk about? What would you choose to uplift in this moment?
Proper treatment, proper treatment for more. There's a lot of people, man, from the homeless. I have a big heart for the homeless. There's addiction, mental health. We need to treat it together, not separately. And we need good treatment. The problem is the way they're going about it with pharmacology and giving narcotics, Suboxone and methadone to addicts is poison. That's the nation's solution. It's not going to work. They need good treatment, and we need to fund it. We need to get everybody into treatment. And then we need, honestly, this is going to sound crazy, but even to the point where, like prison, maybe that you don't get out, till it's done for
Yeah.
the extreme. But we need more treatment, and we need good treatment centers. We need more oversight on them. We do. We need more oversight, and we need more accountability. Get rid of all the trash in this industry, these parasites in it. You know,
No,
that's what I.
absolutely. I know I only have a little bit of time left with you, Michael, so I wanted to kind of ask a few closing questions
Okay.
that I like to always frame around my experts that I have join me, but someone who is listening out there struggling with addiction or
Mm,
hiding it, right?
yeah.
Still terrified of what they lose if they say it out loud.
Mhm.
What do you tell them?
You will lose it anyway if you don't get honest. You got to get honest. Recovery and change begins at the point of honesty. The first time we are honest with ourselves first and then with others. That's the beginning. Without that, you will never recover.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. My last question, you may be the same answer as you said earlier, but end every episode with it. What is a story you would put in the headlines right now if you could? Think New York Times tomorrow, that everyone needs to hear.
We're in a real crisis. More people are dying from addiction than anything else in the United States. It should be on the forefront of everything that we are looking at, period. We are in a crisis, and we are not winning, we are losing. And at the rate we're going, our whole young generation is going to be lost if we don't wake up.
Absolutely. Like literally mic drop. Michael Lynch, thank you so much for joining me. I could talk to you for 2 more hours, so I hope to have you back in the future, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you.